Okay, welcome everybody. It's nice to be here. I hope you have a good trip, like yesterday or today. And I want to welcome you to my presentation about crafting an agile testing strategy. A short introduction, why that topic. In the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, I've faced a lot of companies struggling exactly with that topic. They often thought about or switched from a waterfall approach to an agile approach and thought about that just throwing some testers in the teams is enough to get it handled, but there's a lot more. So what I want to say is agile testing is often misunderstood. You know, there is a lot more than just testers. There is our approaches, and the the three keys to handle it right is the people in the beginning, automation, and to understand that it's not just testing as you know it. It's different. When I started, or when in the beginning of talking to companies, to customers about that topic, they often come up with, yeah, we have the testing pyramid. We know that. Everybody knows it. And in the last years, it really got out of control, to be honest. I don't know. So the testing pyramid is not wrong per se, but you shouldn't just use it as an approach, as a strategy. Think about what you have. Think about what you need in your organization, in your teams, or whatsoever. And it will come up by itself. I mean, is the shift left approach, and if you use you follow the shift left approach, then you will come to a pyramid, hopefully, or another abomination. I don't know. So today we start with the example itself. So the product, the system we have, is a cloud-hosted e-commerce platform, and it's looking like this. So we have a user interface, the portal. We have an API gateway, and we have 4 different products. This is based on a project I did in the past. I simplified it, to be honest, because yeah, there are much more details and much more systems around, but it's not necessary. And I don't want to talk today about technologies or tools itself. It's a methodology you follow or you will approach. So we have the API gateway, and then we have our microservice architectures for our products, 4 different products: the catalog services, the customer service, order service, and checkout service, and the databases. And the teams, when they switch to the agile development, they separated the teams based on the products. So you have teams in catalog teams, customer teams, order teams, and checkout teams. And what you immediately see is those are cross-functional teams in there. They have to handle the databases, they have to handle the API, they have to handle the microservice architecture, and they have to handle the user interface itself. So this is the situation we're facing currently, and how to start now. What do we do? There are 3 cornerstones in agile testing you have to know about, and this is the first and the most critical are the people itself and the collaboration. It's the same as in software development. If you can't bring the people in or get the people to support the way you want to work, then it's not possible. You can have the best technologies, the best tools or whatsoever, the best processes. It just doesn't work. So this is priority number 1. Then we have the processes itself, how to work in the teams, how to have the whole pipeline build up and everything, and the technologies to use. And also in the technologies, I'm often facing companies which say, okay, we buy one tool and that tool can handle everything, but this is not correct all the time. You have every tool is offering a way to work with it. You know, you have module-based test automation, you have test management tools. If it's in Jira, for like X-Ray or whatsoever, first, before you decide on a tool, you have to define how to work, what you need, and then you can see it by yourself what you need. And then after the cornerstones, we have 4 stages of acceptance. We have the increment. After every sprint, there is an increment coming out which has to be tested. There is the release itself, then the product and the business processes. And for every of those aspects, every of those stages of acceptance, you should think about the people who are working on it, you should think about the processes and the technologies you want to use. It looks a lot here, but most often it's not that much. It's in the increment base, it's more or less like, okay, how to align the developers and the testers. But when it comes to the business processes, test data management comes in. The environment, testing environments coming in. You have to connect them on some level. We will see it later. So this is the way we want to approach the whole thing. And then we have a big picture out of it. And the big picture is looking like this. We have the business processes at the top. We know that this is where the users do their stuff. They are the processes, the whatsoever. Then we have the products, catalog, customer, order, and checkout. We have multiple releases over the time. Some are based on one single product, some because of dependencies are for, I don't know, customer and order, and you have architectural changes, which are facing the whole system itself. And for every release, you have different or multiple increments. And this is, if you see that, then you think, okay, I can handle this with manual testing. You're just facing or running at a wall of regret, you know. So that's the second part I want to mention or bring up to visualize that automation is key, whatever you do in development or in agile testing. You have to, and I'm not talking about test automation itself. I'm talking about the process. You need to have a pipeline. You need to have an infrastructure. You need, you all experience it maybe. And for this, you have to think about how to provision the infrastructure, how to deploy the systems, everything. So from that picture, the first question which arises is, okay, but when to test and what to automate? And this is one of the most asked questions at customers. They think, okay, we have some testers in our teams and they do the acceptance, and they don't think about the definition of done, because it's mostly, in the beginning, was mostly here for development itself. So they said, okay, if the developers are finished, it's done, and everything else it will be tested. It is tested maybe. And there are three scenarios here. The first one is you have a sprint for 2 weeks, and the developer is doing his job. He's just starting with development, working on the features or sprint items he have from the backlog, and on some level he's ready for test. A little bit earlier the tester can start because he has to do some preparation, he has to set up stuff. And the problem here is most often they will not reach the acceptance or cannot finish their testing in that sprint itself, so they have to work to the next sprint. You see it here in Module A. And the bug findings they find in Sprint 2, it's very hard to handle them because the developers are already working on another feature. They know they have no time because they are full for that sprint, and they just delay everything. So this is a scenario where nothing is aligned. Just there are developers, there are testers, and they do their stuff. And to the release itself, it's not synchronized. You come to the release and there is a lot of often issues, a lot of bugs open. It's not that working well. The second scenario is where both are aligned, where the development and the testers are aligned. They talk to each other, they work with each other, and the developer is trying to get their feature ready for test as early as possible. I mean, this is an example. It's not often possible to do it on the first week in the beginning, but it's very important that the testers are enabled as soon as possible so they can start the work. And then there is a high chance that they can find the bugs in the sprint itself or finish the testing part in the sprint itself. So the definition of done is achieved. This is very important if you say, okay, I'm releasing every 2 weeks. After every sprint, I want to go live. Then you need something like this. If with most of the companies say, no, our releases we release 6 times a year. You can do it that way. It's the most beautiful way to do it, but it's not necessary, to be honest. We don't want to pressure everybody to finish their stuff within one sprint if they decide they don't want to do it, or their definition of done is different. But this is a good example of an aligned team between developers and testers itself. And then there is scenario 3, and this is one thing a lot of companies are doing. They have their sprint, developers are working on it, and they have packed with their new feature. And they say, no, we don't want to test everything in the sprint itself. We want to switch to the next sprint and do the testing there. This is fine if you have 4 releases a year. I mean, if you don't go live every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks, you can do that. And you have planned your time, the developers have planned their time for the bug finding itself, and it's easier to handle for the developers because the testers, when they start, they often find maybe a user interface or maybe the API is ready, but there are no data in it. There is the feature itself is not complete, so they have to wait a long time. I would not say that there is a best scenario to use. I don't think so. There is you have to use this one or you have to work like that. It's always based on your requirements, on your organization, on your people itself. So this is one thing you have to find out by talking to the people, by talking to release management, product owners and everything, how to handle the testing and how to handle the testers when they should test it. And the next thing is what to automate. And this is also the second point, which I got asked a lot. And there are multiple ways to approach it. What we have here is a picture of the risk-based testing. Most of you maybe know it already. So you have your risk probability and you have your impact, and based on those values you can see, okay, we have something with high risk probability and a high impact, we have to test it. I don't talk about manual testing or automated testing right now, just we have to do something. And then you have your low impact, low risk probability, and you won't test it. It's not like it's carved in stone, it's a gray area. It's not just showing you the different areas and how to think about them. But what is often misunderstood is there is also the maintainability behind it. If there are, especially in the end-to-end tests, there are a lot of technologies or infrastructure involved where it's very hard to keep them up. So sometimes it takes a lot of effort to automate your test cases and in the end maintain your test cases. And if you take this into account, you will have it easier to decide what do you want to put in your regression tests. And to show you an example for this, I have just filled out an Excel form about different processes with the risk probability and with the maintainability, and you have something like this. On the left side you have your risk, and on the right side you have your maintainability. And you see immediately if you have a low risk and a hard maintainability or high maintainability, just don't touch them for automation. You can do it manually. It's okay. You will still always have manual test cases. You will see it later also. But this gives you some kind of a picture of it. And what I also want to show here is you have to work with the people itself, because if you give that to a developer, he will just kick your ass. Sorry. He's not interested in that stuff. This is more from the end-to-end side, from the business processes side, to decide what to do and what to automate. Back to the testing pyramid. I mean, you know, testing pyramid, or often when I'm coming to customers, they have not the pyramid, they have those ice cone. So a lot of end-to-end test cases, but no unit tests or whatsoever. You can, if you use something like this, you can reduce it on a high amount, because you immediately see where you have to focus on and what to automate, what to put in the pipeline and what not. And like I mentioned, it's just a visualization to show you the approach itself, to show you how to what to think about when you define, okay, what test cases we want to automate. Because in the beginning, in the sprint itself, often there is no time for automation. They have to do a lot of testing. They have to do a lot of manual testing to get the definition of the acceptance done. And yeah, the responsibility is also different, because in the end-to-end sector, it's who has the responsibility. It's not in the teams itself. They're working on their product. They're working on their part of the application. So, and you can, with the end-to-end test cases, you can work in sprints itself. You can put them into the backlog, and in the sprint, if the testers have time or whatsoever, they can just use some of those items for automation for the end-to-end processes. Yes, so have a look at the pipeline. Let's look at the pipeline itself, because this is the automated process we talk about. And in the beginning, we have the local development. And there it starts. Before he's checking something into Jenkins or into Git or whatsoever when Jenkins is triggered, it's the first part of quality assurance. And there are certain tests he has to do or should do, you know. It's about unit testing, code metrics itself, very important. Often misunderstood that it's important. Code security, you can already start here. And then the code review itself, which is also a manual task. And the focus of testing is here in the code changes itself. It's not on, I don't know, infrastructure whatsoever. It can be, but this is very hard to do it in the beginning. What's especially for microservice architectures, what's often also possible is that the developers are hosting their own Docker on their laptop, and then they have their whole application of what they need to test or what need to see. For the testers, it's more not so easy because the technical skills are often missing. And the next stage is the development stage. And this is a very crucial stage because everything comes together the first time. And there is a very high risk of an instability here. So if the developers are working on their code and checking it into Git and everything is deployed on the development stage, it's very important here to have a stable environment, to try to keep a stable environment. Again, you start your unit testing, you have your first smoke tests for the user interface or the API itself. Again, also the code security. And the increment test for the testers itself, because there everything comes together, and after the developers are finished and the first stage is clear, they can test for the acceptance of the increment. And if this is done, we're coming to the next stage here. This is the QA stage. And if you can handle a stable development, if you can set up a stable development environment, it's not always necessary to have a QA stage. It's not always necessary. But to be honest, in my experience, not many companies can do that. There is just too much stuff going on, and they deploy something and forget something about, and then the development is crashing, and yeah. So, but this is the first time everything should be as stable as possible, because you start your regression tests, you start your user interface tests, you should start your API tests on the specific system for that environment. And you have your chaos tests also, especially for microservice architectures, where you just kill some services, kill the infrastructure, and see what happens, you know. And this stage is focusing on the release itself. So every change in the release will be tested here manually at first, and then again, based on the other slide I have, decide what you want to automate and what you want to put in the regression afterwards. The next stage is the staging. And this is like pre-prod staging, however you want to name it, doesn't care. Where you have your smoke tests in it, again, your regression tests, but here is the focus on the business processes. So here you have your regression tests for the systems itself, but also the end-to-end tests. And what does that mean? You need your environments connected. You need to communicate between the products I showed you before. You will see it later also. And then you have your user acceptance and business acceptance tests again. So having a fully automated pipeline, there are companies which can handle it, which can do it. But those are companies, they release, I don't know, every 2 hours. So multiple times a day, they need a fully automated pipeline. When I'm talking to banks or insurance companies or e-commerce, in this case, it's not possible. They don't want it, to be honest. Yes, and then the last thing is the production itself. And the production environment is kind of smoke test, basic smoke test to see if the system is up and running, and some monitoring. And back to the staging environment, if you have a stable QA, if you have a stable development environment, you can merge QA and staging. You can do everything from smoke tests, regression tests, system regression, and also end-to-end testing, your chaos tests, load and performance. If you want to do load and performance tests, you need a production near infrastructure. It doesn't. If you scale it down to a certain level, you don't have to do performance testing. It makes no sense. The report is not reflecting the production system. So this is very important here. And when you look it up, or when you think about, reporting also. One thing which is very important, the reporting, especially in the pipeline, should be automated as far as possible, at least for the automated tests. If the developer starts the unit tests, he's getting the report. If he's deployed it on the development environment and the unit tests are triggered, the development gets the report. No, it's a typo, but thanks. No, it's a typo. Normally it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's based, you know, it's the first level and the second gate and the third gate and the fourth gate. In this case, yeah, it's wrong. Yes, okay, back to reporting. It always depends who is the person of interest for the execution results. Unit test is clear, it's the developer. The testers are not doing anything with the test execution results. Smoke tests is more for testing, product owner, stuff like that. Regression tests also. Chaos tests, IT guys, you know, they have to cover the infrastructure, they have to know what is happening. Performance tests, again, also, infrastructure and developers. Also. And the reporting should be also as automated as possible. The developer, if they're checking something, if they're merging in their Git repository and the pipeline is triggered, and it took, I don't know, 6 hours to get the report, if something, how was the test execution, they are not sitting around, they just start doing other stuff, but they should be informed about it, because if something is wrong, if something is broken, they should start fixing it immediately. It's easier on the left side to get fast reports. If you have a big regression set portfolio, and especially end-to-end tests, it can take hours to execute. And mostly those tests are run overnight. So you come in the morning and you have a test execution result. What is also important here is the execution result itself is not viable until somebody has analyzed it. If you get a negative, I don't know, if from 100 test cases, 10 are negative, it's not always that it's a bug or it's something wrong development. It can be infrastructure issue. It can be a dependency which is not merging. Test data management, it's a crazy big topic. The data is not right. So you have to dive into those negative test cases to find out what really happened here, and only then you can report it as a bug, or you can talk to development about what to do next. And again, big picture for the pipeline, we have a pipeline for every product. I mean, you need them separated in the beginning and bringing them together in the end. That's also the reason why I told you the staging environment must be connected. Everything in the beginning you can do mocking, service virtualization or whatsoever to keep it encapsulated from the other systems. And what I also experienced, I haven't, that there is not one development environment for one team, there are multiple. It's also possible, you know. Different developers working on different features or feature branches, and they want to have their own environment. It's okay. It's okay if you can handle the maintenance and if you can handle the stability, do it. Why not? Yeah, the more the better. Let's say it this way. And again, you can if you have a stable development environment, you can just kick out the QA. But most of the time, it's not happening. Very, very, very. Yeah. Yes, and this is, in the end, it's a thing about the tooling itself. I mean, we need tools to do automation. We need a tool for chaos testing. We need a tool for load and performance testing, end-to-end testing. System 8, there are multiple tools which are required to cover all that quality assurance topics. So have a look at the test architecture in the end. The first thing what we need is a test management tool and the pipeline. And the test management tool is kind of the key to have an overview about overall your testing activities. And the pipeline, you know, it's about the process, the automated process itself. And the test management tool should be connected to the requirements of bug tracking system, if it's Jira or Azure DevOps or whatsoever, doesn't care. But it should be connected to it. And the pipeline, yeah, should be connected to the tool, sure. The tools have to be triggered by the pipeline. Functional testing, non-functional testing, the unit test, system integration end-to-end, and also the non-functional testing tools like load and performance, security, and chaos testing. But what I don't like, to be honest, is to connect the test automation tools with the test management tool or with Gyro itself. It's you can do it if they are providing that integration, but in the end, it takes a lot of time for configuration. It will take a lot of time of maintenance just to get the reports back to the requirements of Jira whatsoever. So what normally I suggest is just building a API dashboard, like you use Grafana or Power BI or whatsoever, where you have all the reports pushed in from the automation side, so from the pipeline. Every developer can have their own views, can see exactly that what they are required to see or what they want to see, and also for the manual testing. So you can have a single point of information here where you have the picture of the whole development initiative. Yeah. Excuse me? Yeah, you can do that also. It is possible. I also thought about that when I made this up. But again, there are some tools or some information which you cannot provide in the test management tool. Yeah, you can provide data. Yeah, you can provide test execution results. But to get an overview how your testing or portfolio evolves over time, it's very hard to do it in test management tools. If you use like how it's called, time series database, yeah, you can push every data from the execution results in it, and you can see, okay, in the last weeks or month, our test execution results or our portfolio has increased. The tests are getting unstable or something like that, so you can react better. If you have just the execution results in a test management tool, you can only focus on the current execution, which is also good, but you're missing the big picture or the long-term picture here. It's a good question. Again, I'm not talking about tools or anything. You can find a lot of vendors outside, talk to them. Yeah, that's it from my side. What I want to show here is just an approach on what you have to think about and what you have to keep in mind. And it's like I said before, or said oftentimes, it's the people. You have to work with the people because only they will do the stuff which are necessary to get everything done. That's it.
Yes, I have a question. How does this picture change anyhow when considering working in the cloud? Because everybody's talking in this conference about AI, but another big transformation that at least for me is relatively about a couple of years, it's moving into the cloud, which changes a lot, especially towards testing and agile testing. So would you say something specific about it, please? Thanks.
Yes, I mean, moving in the cloud means that you have to use tools for setting up the infrastructure itself, but you can do it the same way what we have shown here, because I'm not talked about you using a server in your server farm or anything. You can have your requirements in the cloud, your environments in the cloud. You can have your databases in the cloud. So it's not a problem. There are in this case, no different. I mean, this is a big picture, you know. You can go into detail on every topic we discussed today. You can dive in. Yeah? Then you have differences maybe, but it's not a problem.
I'm stealing it directly. On? Yep. If you could go back to the picture of the environments, basically with the toll gates. That one, yes. Because we have a problem with, we have local development, QA, but anyone can ship into QA at any time, which means it's unstable, which means that it takes a lot of time to figure out, was this a bug, or was it just that microservice wasn't up, or was something else? What would your recommendation be for who should own and control the flow here?
Nobody is allowed to push directly or skip an environment. That should not be possible. If that should, but I hope you have some. There is user management, you know. You can have user rights that you just, but the stages are only done by the pipeline itself. The pipeline itself, if the first stage is done, it will trigger, it will be deploy the new environment, the new system on the next environment, and the next and the next. What is a little bit hard here is the part where, okay, when? Because it's not always possible that 100% of the test cases are positive. So I wouldn't suggest that the pipeline is set up that way that say, okay, if everything is green, you can deploy by yourself, because you have your manual tasks also. To be honest, nobody should be allowed, for your question, to push in the QA environment. If the developers are pushing in the QA development, they're skipping a lot of stuff, and they're messing around with, you experience it, they're messing around with the whole pipeline. So take the rights. Pleasure.
Hey, is it working? Yes. So, first of all, great presentation. I saw myself in a lot of topics that you mentioned, and one thing that I realized here, and I can transport to my daily days, is that you mentioned that, and if you look at this architecture that you mentioned here, like we have these microservices and then the API gateway, and at the top we have the UI.
Da.
And one thing that you said is during these testing processes, the UI is something that we test in a specific level or gate.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that happens in my daily job is that the UI itself is also breakdown into different microservices. So when I'm looking into this, I see like we are focusing this testing architecture that you mentioned, very focused on the back-end side and not as much in the front-end side. And my question is, this process can also be applied into the UI,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it can. I mean, the thing with user interface testing is it's slow, you know? It's just slow. So start from the bottom, you know? But you can do the same what you do on the API or at the microservices, you can do in the user interface. The only thing what you need there is everything below, you know? If you just have the user interface with no context to the logic behind, it makes no sense. Yeah, but especially when you start developing or changes in the user interface, this is one thing the developers should do at the beginning, changing the user interface so the testers can start preparing. But from my point of view, there is no difference. You know, I mean, if you have it broken down, it's very good because you can deploy only certain aspects of the user interface. You don't have to do everything every time.
Exactly.
Which company do you work for?
Diconia.
I don't know. Okay. Because not many companies.
It's an e-commerce company.
Sure. Not many companies are doing that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Most of the time they have their big user interface, and if they want to deploy it, they have to deploy everything.
Yeah.
So.
Next one.
Looks like that's it. I thank you very much for that you can be here. And in the evening I'm on a beer, so if anybody's interested or talking, I mean we can talk now also, but with a beer it's more chilled.